try that again. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy to be here. We've been planning for months for this event with the Center for Investigating Healthy Minds and the Global Health Institute. And we're so happy that you were here to join us for Change Your Mind, Change the World. So please give yourselves a round of applause for being here bright and early. We're going to be starting in a few minutes. I have the wonderful, envious job of giving all of the business announcements. So for the duration of the program, we ask that you turn your cell phones completely off and are present with us in the room, minus technology. There is no photography allowed, no videotaping, no audio taping. If you do attempt to do those things, someone will come and ask you to stop. So to make everybody's life a little bit easier, let's see all the phones right now, turn them off and put them away. Once the program begins at 9:35, we are required by security to close all of the doors, so no one will be allowed to leave unless there's an emergency. If you do need to leave, you will not be allowed back in. If you do need to leave, please find an usher to help you get out through the doors in a safe manner. And I think that's what I have for now. Everyone can breathe now. Big breath. That was the tough stuff. We'll be getting going at about 9:35. Enjoy the program. Thank you.
Yes, Ilona Kickbusch from Geneva.
Oh. Wonderful to meet you. You were just in Bern, Your Holiness, were you not? In Switzerland?
Oh, there,
in Bern?
yes, Bern, yes.
Yes, I saw you there.
Oh,
yes.
Richard Layard from London. You were with His Holiness in Zurich.
We met in Zurich, yes.
Right.
I told you about our movement. I will tell you more.
Right. Wonderful. Don Berwick.
It's Don Berwick. It's an honor to meet you.
Oh. Like heaven. Yeah. Go there. Please. Sit down.
Your Holiness, welcome to Madison, Wisconsin. We're so happy that you are here. Your Holiness, the Center for Investigating Healthy Minds and the Global Health Institute, which is directed by Jonathan Patz, are co-sponsoring today, and we're so pleased that you have given us your time today. Yesterday, we had all the speakers together, and we had a group of about 200 people who are friends and interested in these topics, and we brought the speakers and our friends together for a dialogue to prepare for today. One of the things that we did is we asked each person to deeply reflect on their motivation for being with us, for their motivation to attend an event like this. And we asked them to imagine a world where change might occur, where kindness and compassion were something that was familiar and nourished in our children and in our educational system. We asked them to imagine, to envision a different kind of world. And we had cards that each person wrote some reflections on among our group of 200 people. And the cards were collected, and Aaron Stern, who you know from the Academy for the Love of Learning in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and his colleagues, Molly Sturgis and Logan Phillips, have taken all of the comments that people have offered, the 200 people, and have assembled it in a little performance. And I'd like to call them to the stage, and they will do this performance for us that represents the collective vision of human possibility. So if we can have Molly and Logan.
Human possibilities.
Hi, everyone.
We, more than a collection of many eyes, we, a collection of many hearts, we, people coming together as equals without hierarchy to our joys and sorrows, we see a world of people seeing happiness together. People who have so much compassion for all living beings in the fragile earth that they would never destroy each other. We are for a world where well-being is not a privilege, education and onward, a world warm, exciting and loving and open, eyes meeting eyes, and hearts meeting hearts. Warm, connected and joyous, compassionate, joyful, fun and funny. We are busy across generations. This is going to take some time. Clear interconnection and compassion We can care for ourselves and each other in the world. We are a calm and a content society. We come from a world where every child is taught compassion in school. We can care for ourselves. There is a true sense of global community. It is hopefully colorful. It is diverse, it is dynamic, it is warm, it is good. We see a world where people are not alone during birth, where people are not alone during illness, people are not alone at the end of their lives. We come from the sensation of light, faces shining, revealing a true beauty of the souls inside. We come from a world that's a whole lot more fun. Love prevails, and wisdom, and connection, and balance, and huge circles of people, and ideas synthesizing, opening with a joyous concern for others. We come from a world where self-sacrifice is viewed as self-fulfillment. Borders melt away under the sunshine of hearts. Humans stand back to let all creation be free and articulate. I am no longer afraid of you, and maybe you are no longer afraid of me. A child is no longer afraid to make eye contact. Maybe we feel safe in each other's eye contact. The feminine is respected, honored, equally valued, shared in power, balanced with the masculine. Our wounded hearts become tender hearts. Our tears of pain become the moisture for fields of flowers blooming in outrageous colors. It is good to be human, and it is beautiful to be alive. Vibrant, alive, generous, with a vivid beauty, vibrant systems alive. There is a green humming, there is a buzzing, a singing, a dancing, there is laughing and wiggling, replete with love and tenderness, safety and passionate enthusiasm, peaceful and interconnected, deep relief and calm, sweetness, kind, my hand in yours, soft and strong, grounded, honest and happy. Your eyes are bright. I can see myself in them. We're sharing these resonances, a hope that cannot be seen but known. We are a beautifully sung song, our minds settled like a snow globe. We are soaring.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So, Your Holiness, I'd like to now turn the panel over to my very dear friend, someone I've known since 1972. We grew up together. And it is really quite extraordinary how our lives have continued to be so interwoven. Dan Goleman.
Thank you, Richie. And I hope they continue to interweave. It's really wonderful. Your Holiness, today the topic is well-being. And by well-being, we're talking about something beyond the absence of sickness. We're talking about being well in every sense, physically, mentally, emotionally, in our connections with each other, even the planet we live on. And we're going to hear from a number of notable experts on different ways in which we can flourish. To stage right here is Jonathan Patz, who you know well. Jonathan helped organize the Mind and Life meeting on ethics and the environment and interdependence. Jonathan is a co-winner of the Nobel Peace Prize for the report on ICC report on global warming, and he's going to address what a healthy planet looks like. We're honored to have Ilona Kickbusch with us who's going to look at global health. Ilona has worked with the World Health Organization, is a professor in Geneva, and is one of the most prominent voices on global health policy. And to my left is Lord Richard Layard, who you know from other occasions. Richard is a member of the House of Lords and is one of the most eloquent voices in economics, which is his discipline, for the argument that financial success is not the right measure of the success of a country. Rather, it should be the happiness and fulfillment of its people. And then Don Berwick, a physician and perhaps the most influential voice in American health policy, is going to talk to us about what a healthy healthcare system itself will be. So we'll just start right off with, I think, is it Richie? Yes.
So, Your Holiness, I'd like to start by framing our conversation and reminding us all that our minds and bodies are intimately connected. And this is something that scientific research has helped us to better understand, how the brain circuits involved in emotion in different regions of the brain connect to different systems in the body, like our immune system, our endocrine system, and our autonomic nervous system to influence our health. We know that mental turmoil, that stress, can exact a cost on the brain and on the body. In the brain, stress can lead to a decrease in the growth of new neurons. This is one of the major mechanisms of neuroplasticity. We call it neurogenesis, and it simply means the growth of new brain cells. And stress can impair neurogenesis. Stress can also lead to changes in the connections between brain cells. It strengthens some connections and it leads other connections to retract. There are changes in the literal volume of different parts of the brain, particularly among children who are exposed to adversity, children who are maltreated, who are subject to either emotional abuse or to physical abuse. We also know that there are changes in the body. There are changes in inflammation that are exacerbated, that are increased by exposure to stress. On the flip side, there is new work that shows that there's new work that shows that happiness and well-being are associated with improved health outcomes. And I'd like to give two examples. One is a study that was published from Britain very recently by a very prominent scientist in Britain. They studied about 4,000 individuals between the ages of 50 and 80 years. And they obtained measures of well-being, and then they followed these individuals for 5 years. And they controlled for many different factors when they studied them initially. They controlled for their current health, they controlled for their socioeconomic status, they controlled for health risk behavior like smoking and exercise. And then they looked at individuals who are very high in well-being and other individuals who are very low in well-being. And what they found is that across the 5 years, the death rate, mortality, among individuals who were in the bottom third of well-being was 7.3%. The death rate among those who are in the highest levels of well-being was 3.6%. So there was a dramatic difference in mortality among those who differed in their well-being. So clearly well-being is not just a subjective feeling, it also seems to have important consequences for our physical well-being. One other study that appeared in 2012, very important study because it has such critical implications which I think everyone will appreciate. This is a study of about 2,500 individuals, and they're all members of a health plan. And the well-being of these individuals was examined, and then they were followed just for 1 year. And what they found is that for each increase in well-being, for each point that a person had more well-being, the participants in this study had approximately 2.5%, they were 2.5% less likely to have a hospital admission. They were...
Yeah, the well-being is at the physical zone, mind.
So I was wondering how, when you use the term well-being, how do you measure? What is the criteria that is being...
Mainly physical level or emotional level?
Emotional. It's about people's, their self-report. This is the standard, their person's meaning and purpose in life.
Yes. Yeah, did it? Yes. Oh.
But a measure as simple as this, and the other thing they found is that those who were in the lowest group of well-being were more than 2.5 times, they had more than 2.5 times the annual expenditure in dollars for their health care. The people who are the lowest in well-being, it cost $5,172 for their health care on average. In that year, compared to those who are the highest in well-being, it cost $1,185. There was almost a five-fold difference in the cost for health care in these groups that differ in well-being. So I think that this is something that is going to be very important in this conversation as we go forward. And one of the things that Your Holiness knows well, you've taught us so much about this, is how mental training can actually change the mind and the heart in ways that actually scientists have now found change our biology. They change the biology of the brain, and they change the biology in our bodies. And we can actually use these mental training methods to change the very mechanisms in the brain that are impacted by adversity. We can begin to use mental training to begin to reverse and transform some of these effects. And if we can have an impact on well-being through the changes that occur in the brain and the body, maybe these methods can actually have an impact on our physical health in ways that have economic consequences and actually lead to decreased healthcare costs, which is something that I think we'll hear more about as this conversation unfolds over the course of the day. The other great insight in modern neuroscience has been that plasticity of the brain is greater early in life. We know that it's much easier for a child to learn a musical instrument or to learn a second language. And it's probably the case that it is also easier to nourish certain emotional skills. And so we and others are engaged in work to see if we can actually harness the plasticity of the brain early in life, where a small amount of intervention we think may have ripple effects over the course of a human life to improve development in ways that can have consequences not just for well-being, but also for our physical health. And I think this has very important implications for our global health. So I'd like to end here and maybe just ask Your Holiness to comment on this issue. We know that even small amounts of practice can make a difference. And recent research indicates that even just 15 minutes a day can make a difference. This is something that should be possible for a larger number of people to incorporate into their regular weekly routine. I wonder if Your Holiness has any advice or counsel or reflections about how we can sensitize people so that this can become more widespread and we can incorporate this in a more routine way in a typical person's life.
I think for you and you, those as we already know, I think sort of my idea already you know. But the audience, I think most of them I think knew.
Yes.
So no danger of repetition. Right? Otherwise, see, you all knows now. I think when you ask me this question, I think you already knows answer.
That's right. It's an important audience.
Now, I think this very moment, I think everybody feel sort of calm, easy way. And I myself also, if I consider you something different, I myself, because I myself consider something, firstly, I'm Tibetan, I'm Eastern, although some Asian people here. So if I too much emphasis, I'm Asian. And then usually you see people fond to make distinction, Eastern or Western or some kind of big differences. On that sort of level, I consider myself Easterner. Then Buddhist monk. Then even I think more, I'm His Holiness Dalai Lama. You see, that kind of sort of thinking or feeling is automatically make distance from you. Result, more sort of anxiety, right? Uneasiness. Sometimes even feel little because of the fear. Same occasion, this is same situation. I consider you another human being, human brothers, sisters. No differences. I'm just talking, another human being. Then you see that kind of sort of, sources of a little bit sort of anxiety, a little bit of stress that immediately go. If I come talk here, some kind of note, some prepared sort of nice speech, then sometimes you see, read that, sometimes it's difficult to see, then more nervous. So just come here. I always feel I'm going to talk with another human being. Nothing special. I don't care. This is some seriousness, right? Seriousness. So therefore, it really relieves some kind of sort of grasping or importance for myself. Release. Then become very easy. Now here, I think everybody, feel some kind of peaceful atmosphere. If you see we are selling some articles, correct? 토시됐다 가서. Auction. I think then everybody maybe a little bit tense. So, same room, same hall, same human being, but due to different mental attitude, mental state, you see the person's feeling big differences, experience big differences. So, obviously, I think each one, when you met your dear friend, not only just a friend of money or friend of power, but genuinely as a friend of a human being. Then when you talk with such people, even whole day spent, you feel short period. If you talk with someone, you're a little bit sort of, even sort of not sort of hit because of the hatred, but even a little bit of distrust. Then, even few minutes, you feel little difficulties, stress. So all this related with mental element. So therefore, I'm extremely happy, really, because of the encourage all these scientists. Some scientists, even you see, do not accept existence of mind, just brain, a neuron. So change our life through surgery, not training our mind. If we are dealing with machine, or like this head, then only thing is cut and cut away. Now we have these mysterious things that we call mind or consciousness or emotion. So dealing with that its own way, not through surgery or these things. Of course, grosser level of mind, entirely based on brain. So some surgery here, some change, brain sort of the situation, or some change. But then more subtle level, then I think still I think we need to further sort of research. Sometimes it seems to see the subtle level of mind come first the certain experience, then change or effect on our brain. So now dealing with mind, the proper way dealing mind is through mind itself, through training. So here, I always say stress, not talking about next life, not talking about heaven or these things. Simply, how to build healthy human society, healthy humanity. A healthy society, healthy humanity will not achieve through governments or regulations or even United Nations. We cannot do that. So only, we cannot buy healthy mind from supermarket. Perhaps now only hope is those brain specialists. One day, they say, I think, may find some technique. All those sort of, also emotion which create trouble, and the part of the brain which come these emotions remove. Then perhaps everybody from Buddhist viewpoint, through surgery, everybody become Bodhisattva or Buddha. I think that's impossible.
I think so too.
Oh?
I think it's impossible.
So only thing is through training. Training means awareness. You see, deeper sort of analyze the reality, not based on superficial, but deeper level, combined with our own experiences. More awareness, then everybody want happy life, a peaceful mind. So the problem is we never pay much attention about that, and even pay some attention. They usually we rely on pray to God, pray to Buddha. Please bring me peace of mind. That's unrealistic. We must produce peace of mind through our own effort, through our own sort of mental action. Mental action. So awareness, the mental sort of function, mental system. Then interest already there. The only thing is how to tackle these destructive emotion, and what is the method to increase these constructive emotion. Once we know that, then including our dream, you pay some attention. Neglect the sort of because of that method to transform our emotion. That's the way. Training of mind. So just education about mind and knowledge, the method, how to deal with these things. Then perhaps grosser level of emotion, very much related with this physical. So you see, taking care, physical also. Then combine, then healthy body, healthy mind. Then maybe, I think whether we achieve or not, I think it's really worthwhile. Make attempt. So then, this 21st century, this is just the beginning of that century. So the real positive result, may I say so, I think we, speaker, I think may not see that. we truly belong to, we are generation of 20th century, already gone. So we may not see the real, the obvious result. But we must start work with full cooperation, the scientific research and health community. Then I think I always make distinction, Buddhist psychology and Buddhist religion, to separate. Of course, in order to practice Buddhism, since Buddhist practice is changing our mind or transform our mind, so therefore it is highly essential, full knowledge about mind world of mind. But we can take that as a science of mind, not related with Buddhism. Buddhism for Buddhist. But science of mind is something universal. So that I always stress that. Otherwise, you see, I think if people immediately get impression or hear one Buddhist monk now talking about Buddhism. So some people may feel, Dalai Lama, Buddhist monk, trying to convert these scientists to Buddhist. Nonsense. So I never try to propagate Buddha Dharma. It's private business. I think last now few decades, I think we never discuss about the salvation or these things. We're simply talking about mind. Mm-hmm. The very name at the beginning, which is dialogue between Buddhism and modern science. And then I told, this is a wrong word. Buddhist science. Or another word, ancient Indian psychology and modern science, modern psychology, that. So that's my view. So I really very much sort of encourage more and more people among the scientists, really now their sort of interest really reach deeper, deeper, deeper. In order to know reality, we should not satisfy some knowledge about a superficial level. That's difficult. So we must carry further research, further research, further research. One generation carries research and reach certain level, and then next generation, I think should follow. And that's the way to get deeper understanding about reality. I think among the scientists in Western science, I think interest about mind or consciousness, these I think quite new. So should not think these are something, these ideas come from East, and that belongs to Eastern. You Westerner, no interest, Westerner only money. That's wrong. You also have emotion, a lot of emotion. I think sometimes your emotion is more raw way. Because there's no training of mind. Perhaps I think too bold to say that way. So you really feel really great, proud, a sufficient reason about technology, about modern science, these things. Really wonderful. So many people contented there. So talking about emotion, talking about mind, as something not much not much significance like that. I think that's wrong. Good?
Thank
Too
you.
long?
Thank you. Your Holiness, thank you so much. We're going to go to a different level now. We've been talking about the mind and the brain and well-being at the individual level. Jonathan is going to address the idea of a healthy planet.
Your Holiness, it's a sincere honor to be with you again. And I'd like to update you on our last conversation. When we were in India together, I was talking about global climate change. And I have some bad news for you. Just last Thursday, it was reported that for the first time in human existence, the level of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere has exceeded 400 parts per million. Now, 50 years ago, we were at 320 parts per million, and scientists are very worried, those of us that are studying the impacts of global climate change, are very worried once we get above 450 parts per million that many people think is the dangerous level. Carbon dioxide, is the most abundant gas.
May I ask?
Yes.
Dangerous level means the more illness, more difficult life, or eventually a human being will diminish?
Well, that's an excellent question. I have given several lectures where the title is Global Climate Change, Our Demise or Our Salvation. And I'll explain that, why...
Yes. As a survival, Right.
So
there is such danger.
Well, what happened last week was a a milestone level. You know, we knew that we've been climbing, but for the first time in 3 million years, we are at this level of 400. And we can...
3 million years, isn't it? Oh, 3 millions.
3 million
parts per million.
So...
Millennium.
So can you say it again? For the first time in 300.
So for the first time since humans walked the face of the earth.
Yes.
So in our own species existence, we've never experienced 400 parts per million, this level of carbon dioxide. And so we've come up from 320 to now 400, and the worry is above 450, where we're certainly heading that way right now, especially considering that we burn fossil fuels for energy, and we globally emit 2 million pounds of carbon dioxide every second. Every second the clock ticks, there's 2 million pounds that we put up into the atmosphere, and that is about, and we are warming because of that. The Earth is heating up. Now, the last time we met, I told you the concern that I had that global climate change is one of the greatest threats that we face. And I talked about heat waves, floods, sea level rise, hunger and droughts, and very much concern about these issues, including climate-sensitive infectious diseases. And you told me, if you recall, because I've watched the video again and I know exactly what you told me, through your interpreter, Jimpa, that you said that if you have the knowledge that this pollution is dangerous, has a dangerous effect from burning fossil fuels, then there's an ethical responsibility to act, is what you told me. You know, I get choked up when I talk about this. Now, this is a very large challenge. But I personally believe that in confronting climate change, Your Holiness, you're the most compassionate man I know.
No. Selfish.
Someone was saying that there's a self-interest involved because if you can't speak well, then we won't be able to benefit from what you have to say.
Well, this is good timing because this is really one of my main points, is that I believe that by confronting global climate change, we have an enormous opportunity for our health and well-being. And here's why I believe that. The most recent analysis of the International Global Burden of Disease report, it's an international report looking at all diseases around the world. The most recent report came out just this year. And if you think about when we burn fossil fuels that cause heat-trapping gases and heats up our planet, we're also emitting urban air pollution, the dirty, foul air that is in polluted areas. According to the Global Burden of Disease report, every year, 3 million people die prematurely, they die early, because of urban air pollution, primarily from burning coal, oil, gas. In addition, there are many people around the world that use coal and wood for cooking indoors. And so the added effect from breathing that dirty air, that's another 3.5 million people. So we're talking more than 6 million people die earlier because of this exposure to pollution. That's equivalent to the same number of people around the world dying from smoking tobacco, from smoking cigarettes, which is a huge public health concern. So if you add on to this air pollution, the fact that part of what we use fossil fuels for is to run automobiles in internal combustion engines. And according to this report and the World Health Organization, there are many people that are not getting enough exercise because of our car-dependent lifestyle in many places. And the latest estimate is that 3.2 million people die prematurely every year from lack of physical exercise. Our own research here at the University of Wisconsin, we asked the question, if regionally, the largest cities in our Great Lakes region here, if the short car trips, these are less than 5 kilometers, less than 2.5 miles, actually less than 4 kilometers, if these short car trips were eliminated, what would be the air quality benefit? Cleaner air, what would be the benefit to health? That was the first question. The second question is, what if these short car trips were achieved by bicycle? And we're trying to be practical, and let's say just half of those short car trips, and only in the summertime. So 4 months of the year, half of the car trips are achieved. What we found, we would save in this region 1,200 lives every year, hundreds of thousands of hospitalizations avoided, and because Lord Richard Layard is here, I'll throw the economics in, that equates to about $8 billion every year in avoided mortality and health costs. So it's one example of why we need to design healthy places, like building cities for people instead of the automobile. And you'll hear from the speakers. You'll hear from the speakers following me more about how our health depends on all sectors of society and the environment. But I'd like to just end by telling you a story, a personal story. And it's when I finished college and before I went into medicine and public health, I worked with an endangered species. I worked with the peregrine falcon. And when we were addressing endangered species originally, any endangered species, but in this one, we focused on the bird itself. We focused on the spotted owl. We focused on various endangered species that were about to be wiped out. And we focused so much on that individual bird or animal or plant, we were failing. And it was only when we shifted our focus away from the individual endangered species and looked at its habitat, and we shifted our energy away from just that narrow focus and to look at the context in which that species lived, the natural surroundings. That's when we had success, when we brought experts together in wildlife ecology, toxicology, law, and other sciences. The habitats were restored, and the falcons population has now recovered. It's off the endangered species list. So I'll end by saying, when we think of our own species, our own human species, we need to see ourselves in the context and dependence on healthy environments and a healthy planet. We need to pursue a new global health ethic also, and that is health for today with compassion and conservation of natural resources for a healthy tomorrow. So,
Wonderful.
So I have a question for you. When people do learn and understand of these connections, what's the next step to inspire individuals and communities to actually take action and change their behavior?
I think, no. Firstly, knowledge through education, such like you. Now, when you explain the reality according to your research, really showing some sort of seriousness. So many people do not know it's that. So, firstly, education. Educate people. Then, they also, you see, in spite, know that danger, but still, you see, consider the importance of immediate benefit. I think, like you said, use car, short distance. In spite of knowing that, I don't care, much easier, more comfortable, more convenient. So now here, again, it's a certain kind of willpower, determination, the long-term interest. Long-term interest, not only individual, but whole society, whole humanity. So that then develop the willpower, or I must implement that, in spite some temporarily little inconvenience. So here I think moral principle, again, I think involved. Not only just awareness, but sense of responsibility combined.
Thank you, Your Holiness. One of my roles here is as time police.
Oh.
So we have 1 hour left. We have 3 speakers. Our next is Don Berwick, who's going to change our focus yet again. We've seen the individual level, the planetary level. Now, what happens at the local level or the regional level with helping people who are ill get proper care, and how does a sense of well-being fit into that? Don?
Your Holiness, it's an enormous honor to get to speak with you. I'm trying to feel calm speaking with you, but it's not working. I'll keep trying. I'm going to, in the end, ask you about fear. I'd like to start with three facts. I'm a pediatrician, a child's doctor, and when I saw children who had leukemia when I was young, in my 20s, everyone died. They all died. I held those children. And Today, they all live. Every child with leukemia that gets proper treatment can live. So this is a miracle. Medicine has changed the fate of many, many people, organ transplants and dramatic successes. That's the first fact. I don't deny that. The second fact is that in almost every country in the world, certainly every developed country today, the cost of health care has now become a major problem, a major burden. Whether the costs are paid by government or by the private sector, it depends on the country, but always the healthcare costs are going up much, much faster than other parts of social enterprise, and therefore healthcare takes money from other things. In the state that I live in, Massachusetts, investment in education of children by the state has fallen 45% in 10 years. Healthcare costs have gone up 60% in 10 years, and that they're related facts. As healthcare takes more, there's less available for other important social investments. So we have miracles, and the costs are now unsustainable in my country and many others. The third fact is the hardest one to explain, but it is overall, there appears to be no relationship between the increase in healthcare costs and the health of the society. In America, we have a lot of data on variation in healthcare costs. From city to city in America, the variation is about 400%. For people my age, that variation is from about $8,000 per year to well over $20,000 per year. And if you study it, it may seem remarkable, but if you ask the question, is there a relationship between the amount of money being spent and the health of the population, even the satisfaction of the doctors, and the amount of money being spent? The answer is there is a relationship, but it is a negative relationship. The best health is in the areas spending the least amount of money, and the worst health, the worst quality, the worst care is in the places spending the most amount of money. So
what is the reason? What is the reason?
Easy. The reason is that we built healthcare in the wrong place. We built a system which treats disease with technologies, which can work miracles, but we kept building the technologies even when they stopped bringing the miracles. And where we really need the investment in behavioral health, mental health care, in chronic disease care. And I think in care that is based in communities, not in hospitals, we're not putting the resources there.
Yes.
And the economic self-interest, the companies that make their money on the... So it's the good news is we have a solution. It would be possible to rebuild healthcare to produce health, or participate in producing health. But the bad news is it requires a tremendous amount of change. And my work has been to try to help those changes occur. But here's the problem. I think it is fear. People have a mental idea of what great care is. And there are three beliefs that I want to focus on. One is the belief that more is better. More treatment, more drugs, more tests. That's not true, I just told you. Where we see more, we actually have worse results than where we see more subtle use of care. The second belief is that the way to get health is through health care. As if you went to the hospital enough, if you had enough procedures, you would become healthy. And we know that's not true. We know that for every percentage change in health that health care brings you, other things like what you eat and how you exercise and whether there's poverty and whether there's justice, these have 400% more influence on health, 400% more influence than the care. But people don't believe that. People believe you get healthy through care. The third belief, which Richard will talk about, is that you can separate body care from mind care, that you could treat my body and not my emotion. And that is not true. We know that there's a very strong relationship between attitudes and self-esteem and pride and joy and health, as Richie knows. But people are frightened. And when you go to the public and you say, more is not better, they think, oh, you're going to take something away from me. That's a trick. It means you're trying not to give me what I need. If you see, if you say you can't find health through health care, it has to do with justice and the environment and your own behavior. People say, well, you're shifting responsibility to me. You know, you're trying to. It's a trick. If you say the mind and the body are connected, people say, well, you're blaming me. I didn't make my disease. We need a way to communicate with the public in order to change a system that is taking money and health from other very, very important social sectors. And I am searching for ideas about how to overcome the fear and talk to people in a way that they don't think it's a trick, that they understand you are on their side.
Your thoughts? Do you have some thoughts?
I think again, I believe education, awareness. I think society, certain sort of habit or certain sort of way of life and way of thinking. Now, custom chasar.
So there's become sort of firmly kind of ingrained.
And some sort of new findings. There's a new explanation on the basis of finding. Not easy to accept easily. So again, because of that, educate, tell. Then share the Risha.
The main thing is to really finding a way to explain it.
I think like you, these people, you're really very, very expert. So, I think you should speak more. And I think those, you see, the televisions, media people, I think should give more time. Let's speak about these people, rather than you say advertising, or this is something very good, wonderful, or sometimes you say the political sort of propaganda. I think there's a better. I think this is a fundamental issue, isn't it? Some other economy, these things are secondary. I feel this is fundamental. We human being, see, everybody wants they live long and more comfortable. So I think this is a fundamental issue. So you see, a certain way of thinking, certain sort of culture way.
It's sort of a habit.
Nowadays, initially, certainly some resistance or difficult to accept that or understand that. So we have to continuously. I think now up to you.
Time police. Thank you. I'm going to make you a deputy time police. That means assistant.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Holiness. We're actually doing very well, but again, we're going to shift our focus from the healthcare system, from the planet, from the individual, to global health. Ilona Kickbusch has been dealing with this problem for quite a while and has very good insights. Please, Ilona.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased, Your Holiness, to be able to speak with you. But before I even speak about my issue, I must say I'm happy, or perhaps I'm not happy, to be the only woman on this panel. And I thought, just like you were the only monk and you had the color, since I was the only woman, I would also bring some color. The issue of global health, we've been through a global health revolution, and probably you've heard about that. The Millennium Development Goals have helped us. And if you think that we've been able to reduce HIV/AIDS infections by 25%, we've been able to reduce childhood mortality by about half. We've been able to nearly eradicate polio. We have really made enormous strides in global health. But we are seeing that we're coming to a limit with the model that we are using, because these strides have been made with what we could call a vertical disease model. Very focused, very intense, and as I've said, with significant results. But if we want to move further in global health, we are finding we need to rediscover what some of us see as our guiding light, and that is the health definition of the World Health Organization, saying clearly that health is more than the absence of disease, that it is physical, mental, and social health. And as you know, Your Holiness, many people are also arguing that that definition should include spiritual health. When we discussed that in the executive board of the WHO, to get a change in the constitution, some countries said no, that was not possible, because the other three types of health we can measure, but spiritual health we cannot measure. But what I'm trying to get at is that we are trying in the global health arena to say...
May I ask one thing? Spiritual health said, the spiritual condition is in what?
So, when you had the discussion and there was this objection that the spiritual health should not be a factor because it cannot be measured, what kind of spiritual health? I mean, what was the way in which spirituality was understood there?
Now here, let me sort of say, the reality, I think there are two levels of spirituality. One spirituality with belief, with faith, religious faith. Yeah. Another spirituality is certain concept or certain moral principle, certain values. That also sometimes is described spirituality, but without connected with faith.
Yeah. That was the focus of the WHO discussions. And I think probably today, you know, as we've discussed the other days, it's a terminology that is now being called mindfulness or other types. It was not a religious debate in the WHO. It was to say there are dimensions of our being. So what we are discussing right now is how we can move from the disease model of health to a model of well-being, a model of individual well-being, but also that brings together the kind of issues that were touched upon. On the one hand, to take more into account the environment in which we live and how people not only create their own health, but create each other's health by supporting each other, by helping create healthy communities, and we have embarked on such initiatives. But now, even one step further, to start to understand that we also cannot only think of human health, we have to include the health of the planet. And for that, we are seeing that the models of production and consumption in our society are counterproductive. In the health discussion, we see very clearly we're moving from the infectious disease epidemics to what we call the non-communicable disease epidemics. If you think of the fact that 30 million children in developing countries are overweight and obese, and they are overweight and obese because of this change of lifestyles, because of a push from transnational companies, because of marketing of food, of soft drinks to children globally, then there is a new type of global health responsibility and a new type of global health ethic that becomes important, and that we have begun to call the commercial determinants of health that we also need to look at. At the same time, we find that the health discussion then gets very close to a discussion about consumerism. How do we also, in this part of the world, how do we exert the influence that we have? Whether it's the working conditions of women in Bangladesh, or whether it is in relation to our meat consumption or to other issues. So we are grappling in the global health arena, how can we stay focused? How can we measure our results? But at the same time, how can we combine the drive for equity that the global health ethic and the global health movement has with a drive for well-being and a different understanding of how health and society interact. And that, of course, also means speaking the truth to power. And we find that frequently global health advocates come into situations where it is difficult to speak the truth to power. That can be about sexual and reproductive health of women. That can be about the tobacco consumption and companies. But that can also be about the kind of issues that were raised by Don Berwick. What kind of health systems are we building in developing countries? Are they health systems really in the community, for the community, with the community? Or are they health systems that are focused on a disease model that bring an extensive amount of pharmaceutical and technological solutions? And we in global health are actually discovering what we call reverse innovation. That is to say that we actually, if we want to reform our health systems, we must learn from some of those community models in other parts of the world who are actually teaching us how you help create health within a social context, within a different understanding of health-body interactions with the mind, and a new type of responsibility that we take for ourselves, but also for those around us, and not only for our neighbors here, but really given the global health inequalities that are still up to 40 years in life expectancy, that we are willing to take responsibility for those in other parts of the world.
Right. Overweight. The developing countries are not the problem, overweight. In the developed country also is that problem. I think many people and children, the younger generation, overweight.
So why is the specific mention of the developing countries having this rise in obesity among children? Isn't that the case in the developed countries as well?
Well,
I notice many young people is overweight, very strong body.
Yeah. Well, actually, the highest rate of obesity in children is in the United States of America. That is one thing. The second thing is that the highest rate of obesity is with children living in poverty in the United States of America. And the reason we draw attention to obesity in the developing countries is because many people think non-communicable disease are only a problem here. And we're actually starting to see that as we are successful in global health in fighting infectious disease, that the non-communicable diseases, due to the changes in the living environment and the consumerism, are leading to new health problems. And many people think obesity is a disease of affluence. It's actually a disease of poverty. And that's what we're seeing very clearly.
Do you have any further thoughts on? You have a little time.
I don't know. No, nothing. I'm always learning. Very good, wonderful.
Okay. Well, we have a
now I'm waiting the English accent.
Sounds better, doesn't it? It's Richard Layard, please. Lord Richard Layard.
I was so excited when I had Richard's invitation to meet with you again, because you remember last time when we met in Zurich, I was telling you about a movement that we planned to launch called Action for Happiness. And I was explaining that the first thing we ask members to do is to pledge to lead their lives so as to produce more happiness in the world and less misery. And at that point, your hand went up, and you said, "Can I be the first member?" And I have a proof. Like Jonathan, I have the photograph. So you are our first member. But the next thing we had to do was to appoint a director. And we had some very interesting applicants. And one of them had gone into the World Wide Web to see if there was any other organization that actually had this word, happiness, in its title. And this was the answer that came back on his computer. What the computer said on the screen was, "Your search for happiness has yielded no results." But anyway, you will be pleased to know that our movement was launched, that it now has 30,000 members who are trying to live in the way that you have taught us through the basic principles of secular morality. So we are on our way, but we are a very tiny ripple, I think, in what I see as a great tide sweeping the world of people who are demanding that we should judge our society not by how rich it is, but how contented people are in their lives, not by our wealth, but by our well-being. And I think this is this worldwide movement which you have contributed so much to. And I think that we have some very encouraging signs. And I just wanted to talk about two dimensions of this. One is the dimension, the governmental and intergovernmental dimension, where there is some progress. And second is the healthcare reform. So if we look at governments, we already have some governments that have adopted well-being as the objective of the government. Of course, we have Bhutan, but we actually also have Britain. This is now the official objective of the government. And we have well-being departments in all the main branches of our government who are harassing the other workers in those departments to make them more sensitive to well-being. We are measuring, we have now for 2 years been measuring the well-being of the British population. And this is now part of the official statistics of Britain, along with the gross national product and the other things. And this theme of measurement as the first thing to get established, maybe it's the easiest, but at least it's the first step, has been taken up, as I think you perhaps know, by the OECD, the Club of Rich Nations in Paris. And this last month, they produced a very thick volume on how should we measure the subjective well-being of the population. Mm-hmm. This is not all those objective indicators weighted by something or other. This is the actual inner experience of the population of these countries. And they are saying to the member countries, we would like you to measure the well-being of your people in this standard way so that we can compare and learn from each other. And this is actually very important because this organization was the one that pioneered the measurement of the gross national income. So that if they, that was 60 years ago, if they now are pushing the subjective well-being, this is a major revolution. It's a major revolution in the direction of our world culture. But of course, the most interesting thing this year is going to be what happens at the United Nations General Assembly in September, when they adopt the Sustainable Development Goals for post-2015. And there is a lot of pressure to get them to adopt well-being, at least as one of the objectives. We're really hoping that in some way or other, this will come into the statement of these goals. And that would, of course, be a real turn of the tide at the world level, which I think we're now ready for. But of course, if you say our aim is higher well-being for the population, we then have to know what causes well-being. And just summarize what we know about what explains who is miserable and who is happy in a given society. We can explain about a third of the distribution, the variation of well-being across the population by things we know about people. And what are the factors which constitute that? Income is a very tiny bit. Even in the United States, which talks about it so much, income it only explains under 2% of the variation in the population of who is happy and who is miserable. The main factors are on the externals of our lives, the human relationships that we have. Actually, in every country in the world, the family relationship is the most important relationship. But also, of course, if you have work, if you want it, that gives you a relationship, and the quality of the relationships at work, and also, of course, the quality of the relationships in your community. Those are the externals. The internals are mainly your health, but above all, it's very interesting that in these analyses where you say, how do we explain who are the most miserable people in the country? Mental health explains more of the misery, in rich countries anyway, than physical health does. There's variation in both, but the variation in mental health is the biggest single explanatory factor, much more than income, as I said, more than employment, which has been the subject I've worked on most of my life and is an important subject. But these are very small factors compared with mental health. And mental health, as I mentioned, explains more of the misery than physical illness. And yet, healthcare systems have a very tiny fraction. No country practically spends even 10% of its health budget on mental health. And it's a huge struggle to get mental health properly regarded. I was very pleased. I don't know why people cheered you, Don, at one point, but I think it was when you mentioned mental health. I hope that was it. Maybe they were just cheering you generally. I give an illustration of the difficulties of this. Richie and Dan and I were at the Davos meetings, World Economic Forum, last year. And I went to a meeting of what is called the Workplace Wellness Alliance. And this is This is 60 of the most enlightened companies in the world concerned with health of their workers. So this was a 90-minute meeting. We had 10 minutes on cardiovascular, another 10 minutes cancer, 10 minutes diabetes, 10 minutes lung problems, and the time had disappeared. No mention of mental health, no mention. Although these are employers, 40% of all the sickness absence that they suffer from is due to mental illness, not physical illness. And of course, in the society, 40% of all disability is due to mental illness and not physical illness. But we cannot get it taken that seriously. And I just want to mention... I would just like to mention two shocking facts. If you have a physical illness, say you have diabetes, at least 90% of people will be in treatment. If you have a mental illness like depression or chronic anxiety disorder, social phobia, post-traumatic stress, etc., it will only be 1/3 of those people who are receiving any treatment. So it's a complete discrimination against mental illness in our healthcare systems. Even though we have good treatments now, good evidence-based treatments, not only drug treatments sometimes, but also increasingly the evidence-based psychological treatments, well-trialed, thousands of trials, 50% recovery rates, good effects on likelihood of relapse. These are available to be provided, but they're not being provided in the scale at all which is needed. So we don't have enough well-trained psychological therapists available out there, so primary care physicians have no one to refer their patients to, so they just write the prescription for the drug. And many people don't want the drug, so they don't even go to the physician. But there is just this huge demand for psychological therapy, which is not being met. Insurance companies ration how many sessions you can have. They would never ration how many sessions you can have for physical illness, but they ration it for mental illness. Somehow or other, it is not taken in the same seriousness as other things. But I just wanted to report one glimmer of hope from my own country. We took your well-being argument, that well-being is the criterion. And as I say, this is now an argument that is respectable in Britain. We took this argument. We also took the evidence of the huge cost of mental illness. The cost to the employer, I mentioned, but also, of course, the cost to the government. They have to pay all the welfare benefits for disabled people. Took these two arguments to the government, and we said we need to provide a completely new service of psychological therapy based on these evidence-based treatments, which are closely related to the ideas of mindfulness, as you know. This was agreed about 5 years ago now. We're now in the 5th year of building up a national psychological therapy service. We treated last year 500,000 people in a country of 50 million. It's not so bad. We've got a very, very long way to go. But I think that this is a little glimmer. Still very difficult to get the people interested in the body to also be interested in the mind, even though, of course, for the probably a majority of people with chronic physical conditions, there is a mental problem which is also making the physical condition worse. So somehow or other, I would like to suggest that certainly in the rich countries, the main issue facing healthcare systems is how to have an infusion of psychological treatment and psychological awareness and appropriate psychological aspects considered not just by the mental health specialists, but also by the physical specialists. I think it's a very big battle, and we find every time there's any excuse for pushing it under this carpet or some other carpet, that's where it goes. If there's any shortage of money, cut. Psychological therapy, well, it's easy to cut. We don't cut heart surgery, we cut psychological therapy. So I would like to suggest that somehow or other, the real challenge for the health profession is to recognize that mental illness is the biggest cause of misery, and please treat it equally. And surely the simplest principle is that there should be, the treatment for mental illness should be as available as the treatment for physical illness.
Ask your question.
I wanted to ask Your Holiness, I mean, how do you interpret this great difficulty we have in making people think that illness of the mind is as serious as illness of the body? Why is it so difficult to make people accept this?
I think the knowledge or concept about mind is, I think,
Part of the problem probably has to do with people have a very simplistic view of what mind is.
So you already have some kind of culture or custom.
Custom now.
So actually, I usually used to call the brain very sophisticated, complex.
Very complex.
And equally, mind and emotion also very, very sophisticated.
Very complex now.
Very complex. So I think the very concept, there's some problem, mental level, can treat through dealing with brain. I think that may be the fundamentals of the
So maybe there is something like lacking in the very kind of fundamental stance with relation to mental issues, because you assume that by simply fixing at the physical level, things can get fixed.
So that, I think, is related with culture. I think, furthermore, perhaps the Judeo-Christian tradition, Judeo-Christian religious tradition, you see the emphasis, faith. Not my sort of talking, not my sort of discussion about, you see, how to train our mind with fuller picture of world of emotion, world of mind. Whereas I think India, those traditions which include practice of single-pointed mind and
cultivation of insight.
Both not simply prayer or faith, but some kind of training of mind. So in order to carry this training, you have to have sufficient knowledge, some understanding about mind itself or emotions. So as I mentioned before, I think these, the topic or the explanation about these emotions of mind, I think should treat as a sort of separate
a category,
key category, not linked with religious sort of tradition or faith. So then, these days I used to describe, I express, we take the physical health seriously, so hygiene of physical is something common. All this we, because of the studies, about the educate these things. Then, similarly, we should have hygiene of emotion. So, in order to carry that, we should have more the wider knowledge about world of emotion, world of mind. So I think, we, through education. Now again, I may repeat the. In order to carry secular ethics. Now, I would like to ask you, I think you are the Kasoda, I think according to Oxford dictionary, the secular really some meaning of real negative towards religion or not?
The word secular.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily anti-religion, but it's a-religious, non-religious, is what secular means.
Atheism is something different, isn't it? Atheism, some sort of meaning of anti-God or something, isn't it?
Rejection.
Atheism. But secular...
secular doesn't mean atheist.
No. Atheism and secularism, two different things.
Yes.
Yes.
So it is, some my friend, some Christian, some Muslim, you see, they have some reservation, the word of secular.
In the context of secular ethics.
Yes.
But in India, the India's constitution itself is based on secular principle.
Yes.
So the India, whole nation, very much religious-minded nation. So the secular, not at all, this is some kind of negative towards religion, but rather respect all religions. And also, according to some my Indian friend, they explain the secular also means respect non-believer. So I often use this word, secular. So the secular education, some sort of education about moral principle with further sort of detailed explanation about mind or emotion. This should consider as a sort of academic sort of subject, and the secular
approach,
whether believer or non-believer, it should be universal. So a secular way to approach, promote secular ethics, not based on religious faith. Even, I think, frankly speaking, even among religious people, there are corruptions. Sometimes I frankly sit, because of the telling, sometimes religion teaches us practice of hypocrisy, or saying nice thing, but doing something different. not very serious. So these, I think, lack of fundamental conviction of moral principle or secular principle.
Yes.
Through education, if we have some sort of way to educate people, importance of secular ethics, then on top of that, ethics based on religious faith, then become very healthy. But no matter what religion, one religion is so marvelous, important, but never be universal. So only secular ethics, true secular way of
approach,
way of approach, that can be universal. So now my point is so this use secular I think it's that.
So His Holiness is asking, from your point of view, given your background as a British, the way in which His Holiness is using the word secular in the context of this universal, inclusive understanding of ethics. Would the word secular ethics is okay?
Yes, but I would say that what I think I learned from you was that there are basically two facts which we need to bring together. One, every human being would like to be happy. And two, each human being is equally important.
Yes.
And if we can get everybody to accept the second of these, that every human being is equally important, then we can have an ethic which says we should try to create as much happiness in the world as we can. And we've got to that point without mentioning the deity. So that is, I think, the essential of the secular morality, that we derive it from these two basic human principles. And if we can internalize that strongly enough in people, then we can have a good society, even if not everybody is believing that God is instructing them to do these things. But if other people believe God is instructing them to do it, that is also very good, of course,
yes,
if it makes them do it.
Very good, very good. Very good. Now, I have some confirmation. This word secular does not mean something negative towards religion. Confirmed from one experienced or old English person who has supposed authority about the English language. Thank you. Thank you.
Your Holiness, I have a follow-up question, though. You're saying that if children were taught an ethical sense early on, it would help much. But Richard and others have been talking about a kind of distress that goes beyond perhaps what an ethical sense can fix, because mental illness, of course, is destructive emotions that don't stop. People who are depressed, who are very, very fearful, or a distorted perception. And I'm wondering about the potential role of outside the delivery systems of, say, hospitals and so on, of the kind of work that Richie is doing on mind training, as you urged him to do some years ago, taking techniques outside the religious context in a secular way, verifying them and then spreading them widely. Do you see that perhaps people could also, in addition to whatever else help they get, could do something for themselves with this kind of mind training?
Well, I think certainly. I think my main interest or main concern is as a preventive measure from kindergarten, you see, some knowledge about our emotion and some knowledge how to deal with this emotion through education. Then that's, I think, best way preventive measure.
Yeah.
Once someone, you see, seriously disturb their mind, then I think of course,
so in those situations, of course, then we have to use the interventions that we are talking about, part of the delivery system, but also from outside.
So obviously, you see, there are even those healthy mind, they create a lot of problem for others. So that the person himself, herself, not something ordinary level, not disturb their mind, destructive mind there, disturbed mind, very healthy mind. So therefore, they plan very carefully and how to harm other maximum way. So their mind is very healthy.
Ethics not so healthy.
Yes. So now, we are talking more sense of concern of others' well-being. It's best way to get your own physical health. And fears, distrust, hatred, anger automatically reduce because you respect them. You love them. You actually voluntarily take sense of care or sense of well-being of them. Therefore, you see, these harmful emotions, I think generally will not come. Even you see develop, but quite weak, not very sort of intense. No. So then, if we teach people, the compassion is something very, very important. It is something because of the holy way.
Holy, yeah.
Holy.
Precious.
And then those people, not much interested about religion, then they don't care. But then if we educate people, the more warm-heartedness, more sense of concern of others' well-being is the best way to achieve your own peace of mind. Through that way, you get more healthy physical and happier family. So one family, 10 family, 100 family, 1,000 family, that is society. So healthy society will come through that way. So not talking about God, not talking about Buddha, it's a private business, isn't it? Now we are talking humanity, 7 billion human beings. So I think really, when this subject you see discussed with generation who belongs to the 20th century, then this is truly compassionate. Our own interests not involved. We are talking or concerned about coming generation, isn't it? So we are not selfish. So that's why, in order to reach 7 billion human beings through education, so there's no other alternative except secular way. So if secular is something negative towards religion, then very difficult.
Sure.
But now your confirmation, I really 1,000 times thank. So this is now very good. Oh, secular, not at all. This is something negative towards religion. Actually supporting all major religious traditions, which talking about practice of compassion, forgiveness, tolerance. The secular ethics is basis of these sort of religious ethics. So therefore, then still, individual remain non-believer, okay, with certain conviction because of the secular ethics. Then their whole life becoming more positive. And as a result, they themselves much happier. Then these mental diseases, I think, out of sort of loneliness, out of fear, out of too much sort of sadness, these will stress will reduce. So it is sort of quality
So His Holiness is asking you, Lord Layard, with all of this, do you think His Holiness is qualified enough to be your member of this action group?
Definitely. But we will report back to all the other members what you said.
Thank you.
I think we've reached on a wonderful note the end of our session for the morning. I want to thank each one of the panelists, and I want to thank you, Your Holiness, for your wisdom. We can do
Scarf. First to lady.
The only one.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Special thank. Thank you. Thank you. Which way?
Richie, you want to leave?
Which way?
this way.